Hi guys, welcome back. I'm recording in my car because I'm about to go to one of my clients' place, and essentially what I have to do for him is, at first I'm setting up a NAS server for him. So I'm working with Open Media Vault, and I'm setting up a NAS server with a RAID setup. And I got it working before, but for some reason when I changed some configurations, so I installed the NAS server on a Raspberry Pi, and then when I changed the configurations of Open Media Vault, it ended up corrupting something, and it started to force the Raspberry Pi to boot in safe mode. So I just decided I might just do a clean slate and wipe it and reinstall it, and that's what I've done that, and I'm at the stage of setting it up so it has shared folders, and so you can upload files and video files and all that. And essentially that's just part of one part of the project that this client wants me to complete. He also wants me to set up his home business network because he works from home, and essentially this NAS server is going to be a part of that system. Anyways, so while I'm driving, I was thinking of just recording a video and talking about what I was thinking about. So recently, because since in my past video I was talking about how to build a business, and I was saying that if you don't have any cash flow and if you don't have any customers coming in, then the business is going to fail. And I was thinking about so what I actually did was I actually made so what I did was I joined a couple of Facebook groups. So we have a Facebook business page, and I joined some of the Facebook groups to sort of get more exposure and see if there's any other businesses that I can network with. And essentially, I just wanted to contribute something as well, to give some value so that people can get to know us and get to know what value we provide, right? So I was looking around, the posts and the questions, and there was a post on one of the business pages, and they were asking, what is the most important skill in business, right? Like, what is the most important skill to learn? And they mentioned marketing, right? And I essentially responded, and I'll basically explain my answer. So in my opinion, marketing, so they answered marketing, but in my opinion, marketing isn't the most important skill to learn in business. What the most important skill to learn in business is, it's not sales, it's not lead acquisition, it's not it's not operations, it's not taxation, it's not leadership and all that kind of stuff. Those are also important, but they're not the most important thing, right? The most important thing when you're starting a business or you're in a business is your ability to learn new things. Because if you don't have the ability to learn new things, none of what I've just mentioned before you would be able to achieve, right? So no one's naturally good at sales, no one's naturally good at marketing, no one's naturally good at business, no one's naturally good at anything. When they're first born, you're first born into this world with nothing, and you have to learn everything, right? And it's the same concept in business, right? With business, right? When you start a business, it's very, very daunting and very, very scary when you're starting a business, because everything is new to you and you don't know where to start. But the caveat is that like in a bigger business, right, you can hire people to do the things that you're not good at, right? But when you're starting out, you don't have any income, right? And unless you've saved up a lot of money before you started the business, you've got capital, and then you could then hire people. But if you start off from scratch and you're bootstrapping and all that, you have no funding, right? Right. So what do you do, right? So when you're servicing your clients, whatever service and product that you're providing them, you have to learn the trade, right? So you learn that first, right? And then when you learn the trade that you provide and offer to your clients, then you have to learn how to, to sell yourself and to sell your skills. And then after that, you have to learn how to market so that you have a funnel, and then you have to learn how to create a sales funnel, and then you have to learn how to convert your leads from so your cold leads into warm leads. So you have to learn how to qualify your leads as well. And then when you qualify your leads, you have to make sure that you close those those warm leads, right? So you might have to learn a process and procedure, like you have to learn the sales cycle and the sales funnel, and how to say, like, do demos for clients to showcase the product, right? And that would that's essentially everything that I've just mentioned, right? All of that you have to learn, right? You don't have to be the best at it, but at the very beginning, you're going to have to learn it anyway, because you're going to have to start somewhere, and you either have a lot of income to hire people, or you have a lot of time on your hands. And when you're starting out, no income, you have a lot of time on your hands to do the actual work, right? So there'll be stages though. There'll be stages in your career or your business where you get to a certain point where you're getting enough income, and that's when you can start hiring people, right? The good thing, the thing about hiring as well is that you don't know initially who to hire, how to hire, what traits to look for, so on and so forth, especially if you're trying to hire in a field that you don't understand or don't know. So if you're not an expert in sales, or if you're not that good at sales or marketing, you're not going to know the traits of a good salesperson, right? Like, you might assume that a confident person is a good salesperson, but because you haven't done any sales before, you can't really tell, oh, this person's a good salesperson, right? Yeah. Or, for example, programming, right? You can't tell if you haven't programmed a line of code at all, and you see someone with a resume, right, and it says, oh, they learned PHP, they learned how to do, Node.js, they know React.js and a lot of frameworks and all that kind of stuff, and Flutter and Ionic and all that kind of stuff, and they spam you with all these keywords and these key terms and these these trendy topics, right? So it sounds like they know what they're talking about, but if you're just an average person that you sort of heard those terms before, but you didn't know what they were exactly, and then you came across a programmer, and then they said, oh, they know all these things, and you just assume that they're good at it, right? But then next thing you know, 6 months down the track, they show you the work, or you ask them to do work for you, and then you realize that they're actually not that good as they told you before, and it becomes a letdown, and then becomes an issue for you, because you then spent a lot of money just hiring that person, and it cost you more, right? So getting back to my point, the reason why it's important to learn is because for you to be able to vet that person in the first place, for you to be able to know that if that person was the right person to get on board, you have to know some of the ins and outs. You don't have to be an expert, right? Because when you're running a business, there's going to be experts that you hire that's much more knowledgeable than you are, right? But at the same token, you don't have to be an expert, but you at least need to have some knowledge, and you at least need to know what's going on to be able to know if they're the right person and they're the right fit, right? So that's where the learning comes in. You need to learn. So if, for example, if you're going to hire programmers, I'd advise that you'd probably learn some programming yourself, so that at least you have some tools to use when you vet the programmer that you hire, right? And you can easily tell if they're a good programmer or not. And essentially, if you're if you learn to be like a decent programmer, and you find someone that's way better than you at programming, then you definitely know that they're way better than you in programming, right? So they've got the skill. But if they're worse than you in programming and you're mediocre or average, then it's a good sort of measure to say that it's a red flag. We shouldn't really hire this person, right? But yeah, obviously there's like scenarios where you want to hire for potential. So you do use the experience that you have, and you use that to vet the person and see if they have potential, and if they don't have that much experience but they have potential. So you have to. Oh, sorry, I just had lunch. So you have to look for the balance of potential and also skill and experience, right? Because when you're also starting out, you don't have the prerogative to pay for the experience, right? So you might hire someone that's less experienced, but based on your own experience, you see their learning process, and their learning process is fairly efficient, and you know that they can learn within a couple of months, right? And you give them an assignment, you say, take this course online and you can learn this within 3 months, and then after that, then I can assign you like a proper project from a client, right? And of course, they're not going to be, they're still going to need like hand-holding at that point, because it's only like 3 months of training, but at least you know that they have the potential to pull the job off, right? So that's the thing. You need to learn to be able to figure out what skills you need to hire, and know how to vet other people by the skills that you're learning for. So for example, if you're an engineer and you don't know any accounting, you have to learn some accounting so you can correctly vet the right accountants to hire, right? Different accountants are experts at different areas, right? So you have to learn a bit about your area and your field that you want to focus on, right? And then you search for the skills that you need, right? So and when you're starting out in business, because you can't hire anyone, you have to wear many hats and you have to juggle many things. So no one's going to be there to do it for you. So you're going to have to learn it yourself. So that's the main reason why learning is important. And then after learning, right? So you need learning to learn your skill to provide the product and service, and then you need learning to do marketing and sales. But the next most important thing about in business, like the skills to learn, is marketing and sales, right? Because marketing and sales, you then, once you have a service or a product that you can sell, right, that you've created, then you have to go straight to selling, right? Because reason being is you can be a non-for-profit, right? But if you want to aim for something and achieve something, right, then it's going to need resources. Either you become resourceful and you get away with doing things for free, and you get assistance from volunteers, and volunteers help you do things. But if you're intending to build something big or build something substantial, then you're going to need resources to pay for so you're going to need income to pay for the resources. So to get that, the first thing you need to do is sell, right? Because you can do marketing, but marketing is not going to get your first customer. Sales is going to get your first customer, because you're going to sell the first customer your product and service. You're going to close the deal. They're going to do the transaction. You're going to have the next income to spend. You have more income to spend for marketing. Now, if you didn't do the initial sales initially, right, then you wouldn't have the resources to spend on marketing in the first place, right? So sales is a second thing that comes in, and then marketing comes in after. Because once you've got a couple of sales in, then the marketing side of things becomes easy, right? Because now you have a track record. Now you have a track record of working with customers, right? And you can use that as as a tool to convince your next customer to work with you, because you can tell them, oh, I've worked with these types of customers before and they were pretty happy. And that's where you'd probably get testimonials from your customers as well, to basically boast about your service, product and service, right? So sales and then marketing, right? Now, I was discussing this with one of my potential customers, right? So essentially we met up and we were just talking about the requirements of his website and what he wanted to build. And I was saying that because he's been in business, well, he works in his family business, and his family's business has been operating since 2004. And I told him, you're in the best position, because people that start off and people that ask us for like web design and web development straight away, without any reputation or without working with customers previously, like you can make their website fancy, but it kind of looks sketchy when you're trying to you look desperate to actually get your next customer, right? And when potential customers look at your website, they tend to look at the reviews, right? When you buy something from eBay, when you buy something from Amazon and online, you tend to look at what is the reviews of this seller. Do they have high reviews, or is our reviews pretty crappy, right? Now, because this potential client has been working since 2004 and he has a backlog of clients, I told him, oh, you better get your testimonials from your clients, right? And then, so that's the key selling point for the marketing side of things of your website, and that's what we will need to put on your website, because people work with who they trust, right? And the more testimonials you have on your website or on social media, or something to give your future customers a taste of what you do and what you have done, right? If you provide that to them, they're more likely to work with you. It's kind of like on your resume, right? If you have the reason why entry level employees, right? The reason why it's hard for them to find a job is because it's a catch-22. The employers are trying to see, is this new recruit, is he or she capable of doing the actual work, right? So they might risk hiring a bunch of juniors or entry level just to test them out for trial, right? But a lot of the times they'd actually prefer you to have some level of experience. But how do you get experience without experience, right? So at that point, your resume is nothing in terms of the design. Like if it's fully designed properly and it looks flashy and all that kind of stuff, but then you have zero work experience, right? No one's going to hire you based on that, just on that resume. Like you can have a really bland resume and then have, say, 20 years experience on your resume, and someone's going to hire you straight away. Not because of the styling of your resume, but because of the experience that you have on your resume. The styling is just, the cherry on top. Like, if the employer is picky about, the styling, like in some senses it's important. Some industries it's important because it's a design, creative-centric industry. But most of the time, a lot of employers just skim through your resume and they actually look at, can you do that job, right? So essentially, having no work history is essentially like having nothing on your resume, right? So that's why it's important to get referrals. And so that's why with marketing, the key thing about marketing is how do you get your future customers, right? How do you get your future customers to trust that you can actually do work? And sure, you can focus on landing page. It has to look good. It has to be presentable and professional, right? Being professional looking is sort of like the cherry on top, right? it's good to have when you have everything else in place, but if you don't have everything else in place, like the past experience and also the reputation, right, then a good-looking website is not going to do you good, right? It's like it already enhances those companies that are doing well. I sort of made up this example as well, where having a website is very similar to having an office space, right? You don't need an office space if you're just starting out, because how are you going to spend for all that cost, right? Because getting office space in an actual physical location is expensive, right? So if it's expensive and you're not getting any customers in, you're not getting income in, then there's no point, right? There's no point of doing it. And that's why there was this other question on the business page that I was commenting on, that I recommended, because someone was asking should they get like a physical location and then they're already working remotely, and then I said, no, I wouldn't recommend you having a physical location, because it's just costly, right? What you should do is, if you want to have a professional address, is that you apply for a virtual office. You apply for a virtual office, right? So when you have a virtual office, basically you're borrowing the address of the actual shared space location, right? And if you say if you're sending emails with letterheads and then it has your say address, right, it looks more professional, right? If you're receiving, say, business mail, then it's more professional. Or if you're sending mail, and if you're doing all the business transactions, it looks more professional than having a home address on your actual business. And also, it's safer. It's actually safer to have your business address and your home address to be separate, because you don't want people coming to your house and doing certain things. Because if once you put your address publicly online, then people can tell where you live. So if you put a business address on there, then it safeguards you from all of that stuff, right? But you can get away with just having a virtual address and like with an actual shared space. And then when you do need to, say, work remotely, and if you do need to meet with customers then you meet with them in the shared space, or you meet with them in the library, or you hire like a office, hire a room temporarily in the shared space to meet with them. But going back to the main point of marketing, is that like, for example, a website, right? A website, you can have the same design website, right? And for one customer, it will work wonders, right? But for another customer, it's not going to be as effective, right? Because for the other customer, it's like you're trying to sugarcoat, a company that is not really that good, right? So it's kind of like you're trying to sell a really bad product, right? It's hard to sell a bad product. Like, you can be a very good salesperson, but eventually people are gonna see it as see you as a fraud, because you're selling something that doesn't work properly, right? So you'll get away with it for a while, but eventually people will notice. So the first thing is you have to focus on having a really good product and service first, and then if you attract people organically through a really good service or product that you're providing, then the marketing will enhance and accelerate your sales, right? Because and that's another thing as well. So first you need to learn how to sell, because you need to know how to close a deal and get your first few sales so you can get cash flow, right? But after that, don't limit yourself to just sales, because you need marketing as well. And what marketing will do, right, is because if people will rather buy things from people they know, right? So when you're selling something to a random person, even though your product is good, they're less likely to buy your product if they feel they have some reservations, right? The thing about what marketing does is it tries to remove that reservations that they have about the feelings that they have about your company and your product and your service, right? And it removes that so that those cold leads, so it's instead of becoming an outbound sales, it becomes inbound, because customers are approaching you instead of you trying to approach them. And when they approach you, half the battle is won, because they're already interested in doing business with you, right? Because they saw what you're capable of doing because of your marketing material, and then the next step is just to close the deal and say, oh yeah, so you've seen our work, and you liked what you heard. This is the deal that we have. Do you want to go forward with this deal? And that's where the sale then becomes much more easier, right? So, but I would still recommend doing cold sales, because cold sales will make you learn grit and thicken your skin, and it will give you the tools to be able to do warm leads, or closing warm leads much more easier, right? So with warm leads, once you have the skills to do cold calls or cold sales or something like that, then selling warm leads is gonna be easy. So first, learn how to learn, so that you can learn the basics, that what you need to know, and what is required, right? Learn how to learn, and then after that, learn how to sell, so that you can get your first few clients in. And then after that, you learn how to market, so that you can accelerate your sales funnel and accelerate the amount of leads that you get into coming into contact with you, right? Yeah, and then after that, right? After you've learned sales, marketing, then you have to learn retention, right? You have to learn how do you retain these customers, because there's so much effort that you spend in just getting one new customer, right? Like one new customer can take months or even years, right? Just to lock in that customer, right? So, and keeping an existing customer, right? So once you finish a job for them, and then you pitch to that previous customer a new proposition or a new job, right? It's much more easier to keep that old customer, because they've already worked with you and they've already built that trust, right? So if you're going to resell, if you're going to upsell, if you're going to sign a service level agreement with your existing customers, if you're going to get them to come back to do business with you and all that kind of stuff, it's much more easier. So you have to learn ways to say, how do you continuously keep working? That obviously benefits both parties and not just yourself. Like, you can't just sign, say, like an agreement with them so that they keep paying you, monthly, and then you're not providing them with anything and no service, and therefore you're going to burn that bridge, and then they're going to be upset with you because you're not even providing them with a proper service, right? So you have to learn how to retain those customers on good standing, and you have to make it into a win-win situation, right? And then once you do that, right, then essentially you've already started the basic of having essential system of your sales pipeline and maintaining your business, right? Then all you need to do is hire other people to replicate that, so that you don't have to work in the business, but you can work on the business, and you can work on refining the systems while the system works for you, right? So so there's stages, right? And yeah, so reiterating, First thing that's important is learning. Second thing that's important is sales. Third thing that's important is marketing. Fourth thing that is important is retention. And then after that, fifth thing that is important after that is scaling. So, scaling. So once you have a successful system to get customers on board and to have a pipeline and to retain customers, right? Then you need to figure out, how do I multiply this, right? Because now you become the bottleneck if the whole business surrounds you and you're doing all the sales and all the marketing and getting the leads and then maintaining the work for the customers. You're basically a sole trader and you become the bottleneck, right? So it's effective until it's not, right? It's effective until you get so much customers that your process and the way you handle customers becomes ineffective because you're burning yourself out because you're trying to do too many things at once and you can't spend quality time on each customer, and then they start to complain about your service because your attention is split in between different customers, right? Right. So when you get to that point, you have to reinvest into the company, to invest in systems and to invest in people and train them as well. So you have to invest in training. So that's the next step, training, right? So you train people to create systems and you work on the business, right? Yeah, and essentially, once you got that, then you're essentially following the, so Robert Kiyosaki, he talks about in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, about the 4 quadrants, right? So you've got employment in the first quadrant, the second quadrant is self-employment, the third quadrant is business, and the fourth quadrant is investment, right? So employment, you're just working for someone else, right? Self-employment is that when so employment, you work for a system, you're working for a system, right? Self-employment, you're working for yourself and you are the system, right? A business, right? You then start working on systems, you own the system and you control the system, but you're not the system, you're working on the system and it's running for you, right? And you control it, right? And then when you get out to investing, right? Investment is that someone else owns the systems, or you own it yourself, but you sort of you're just an owner. You don't actually build it, but you invest in it, right? So someone else is operating the company for you, and then you're investing in the company, right? So if it grows, your income grows as well proportionately to how much the business grows, right? But it becomes passive. So investment becomes passive, right? But I forgot which book it was that he wrote, but the thing is, the reason why, like, he recommends not to get into investment straight away, because sure, you can start, getting some of your spare cash and putting it into the investment quadrant straight away, but what's, say, 10% of, say, $10 is like $1, right? And say that you get that much interest, that's how much interest you get, right? For $10 investment. But if you only have a spare $10 spend a spare $10 cash to invest, right? Then it's not going to do you much good, right? It's going to take you ages just to build up the capital, right? But say, for example, if you made a business or if you own a business, right, and that's generating millions of dollars per year, right? Say for example, revenue is $1 million, and then you get 10% on that, which means 10% would be 100,000, right? So even though you have to put more capital down, you've got more larger numbers to work with, so you can gain $100,000, right? And that's passive. You're not working for that, right? So that's one aspect of it, that you're able to work with bigger numbers and you get bigger returns. Second aspect to it is that if you jump straight into the investment side, you're gonna make bad decisions because you're not gonna know what to invest in. And this comes back into the learning aspect of it. Like, before you're able to invest in things, right? You need to understand what you're investing in, and one of the most effective way to know what you're investing in is to actually have been in that industry and know what it's like and know who the right business is to invest in, because you can do a background check of it, and because you have some experience, you have something to refer to. You can say, based on these types of processes and their annual reports and all that kind of stuff, their financial reports based on, and also the valuation based on that, right? I can tell this company is going to be a good company. It's actually undervalued. And once you have those tools, then you can become an effective investor because you have that experience behind you, right? Some people don't go to the business side of things straight away. They go to investment, and because they have mentorship, and the mentorship teaches them what the right way to, correct methods in investing in, they get mentorship to learn, effective ways to invest, right? So that's one way as well, but you have to know people, right? But once you have business experience, right, and you have a lot of capital, you can become a venture capitalist as well, right? Because you have the experience of starting your own company, running your own company, and then you have the experience running your own company. So if you do decide to, become a venture capitalist, you can be, because of the fact that you have the experience, and you can mentor other businesses as well on how to run their business, right? Yeah. So first, learn. Second, sales. Third, marketing. Fourth, retention. Fifth, training and scaling. And then sixth would be learning about the 4 quadrants and learning how to go from, self-employed to business owner to investor, right? And then after that, once you become, business owner and an investor, you can basically do it all over again. And because you have the skills, you can become a serial entrepreneur and then repeat the cycle. And I'll be honest, but I'm not at the stages of big business yet and investor. But I'm in the transition between going from the self-employed to the business, because I'm building the business systems, but I originated from self-employment, right? So I do have some business experience, but I'm sort of trying to learn as much things as I can and sort of relaying that information to other people so that they can learn as I'm learning as well. So I'm teaching so that's another thing as well. When I said that learning is one of the most important skills, one effective way to learn how to learn and to learn things very well is if you teach them, right? So if you learn them and then you teach them to someone else, then, because the thing is, you can't explain things and you can't teach someone what you don't know, right? If you're just memorizing things without actually deeply learning that specific thing, then you're not going to be able to teach it. You're just going to be able to reiterate this is this equation, this is this function, this is this syntax, this is this script. You do it step by step. But then when someone asks you the question, oh, why do you do it this way? You don't know how to answer them. Because the reason why you don't know how to answer them is you haven't actually learned those concepts. You just learned to memorize it and reiterate it and not actually learn the fundamentals, right? So if you learn it, and then if you're able to teach it, that means you understand it very well to the point that you can actually teach someone else that concept, right? So that's what I advise. The best way to teach to learn something is to teach what you know, right? And if you can teach what you know, you'll become a better entrepreneur, because instead of just trying to do everything yourself, you then try to teach everyone else how to do it, right? So instead of trying, you then don't need to micromanage people, right? So instead of trying to micromanage every single person in the company, you teach them how to manage themselves, right? And they become independent modules in the system that work independently. And sometimes you interact with them, but for the most part, they're working independently, and it makes your company as autonomous as possible, right? So, so essentially, those are the things, right? So, and that's why, from explaining all of this, that's why the first most important thing to do is you need to be able to learn these things, right? Because if you're just stuck in one mindset, and you're not open to learning new things, then if someone has a method that's a more improved way of doing things, and you're not open to that, then you could be missing out in opportunity, right? But on the same token, right, sometimes you have to stand your ground, and because sometimes there's so many opinions, right? There's so many opinions, and people say, like, with people with different backgrounds, they say, oh, why don't you go do this, and why don't you go through that? Like, it might be more effective for one person, but in their industry, right? The method that they're talking about might be effective, but it might only be effective in their industry in that certain circumstance, right? But it might not be effective in all circumstances. So you may have to, you may have to adjust, or you may have to get second opinions, third opinions about it, just to verify, is this the right advice to follow, right? And so surround yourself with smart people, surround yourself with advisors, surround yourself with people that can advise you on things. Because there's a saying, you're the average of the five people that you hang out with the most, right? So they don't have to be physical people that you hang out with most. It could be, the books you read. It could be the material you read and watch and expose yourself to. It could be the people you follow online on social media. That could be the influence that influences you, right? And you're the average of the main 5 people that you take influence from, right? Yeah, and it will show, because the 5 people that hang around with you want to hang around with you because you are similar to them, right? Or they see potential for you to become similar to them. Because if you're ever in a group that is not similar to you in mindset, it's always such a pain just to be within that group, because you just don't fit in, right? But also, those 5 people, make sure those 5 people are people that are probably at your level or smarter than you, right? Because the smart people in that group will push you to the new limits, right? They might drive you crazy, but they'll push you to the new limits. Whereas the people that are in line with your level will keep you sane, right? Because sometimes the people far too advanced from you are pushing you too far, that you're like, oh, I can't keep up. Whereas the people at your level you have some people to relate to, and you could help each other out to progress with each other. It's kind of like going to the gym, right? It's easier to go with the gym when you have a couple of mates coming with you, because you've got people to motivate you to go to the gym. Whereas if you're just doing it by yourself, it's like most people would go crazy unless you have very strong self-discipline, right? Yeah. So I'm just babbling on, but I'm just saying things now that are on my mind. But yeah, so surround yourself with intelligent people, and the people that you want to be or you want to grow into, right? Because their personality, their influence will rub off on you, and they will influence you to become better. If they're toxic people, they're going to influence you to become worse. So you don't want to become negative and worse if you're around, very toxic people. You might be in situations where you have no choice to be around toxic people, right? Because you've got strong ties with them, but you can minimize the time that you spend with them to minimize their influence on you and the negativity on you. So it doesn't mean you cut them out completely, but it also doesn't mean that you spend 100% of your time with them, because they're just going to pull you down, Yeah, so that's basically it. So going from learning all the way to choosing who to hang out with, and, yeah. Anyways, if you like this content, please hit the like button and subscribe. If you want to learn more, and if there's any specific questions you want to ask, please leave a comment down below, and I'll see you in the next video.